Battle Showdowns. We love them. Even if there's only been, 3 since the start of the Turbo Hybrid era? But before that, there was one every single year. Actually, no, there wasn't. 2012 was an anomaly season. It also gives people the totally incorrect belief that the old days pre-hybrid was super duper competitive and anybody could win a race as if it was reverse grid BTCC or the Indy 500. It also wasn't without its controversy either. Pastor Maldonado had won that year's Spanish Grand Prix, proving that on his day he could be a brilliant driver. But there were some rumours going, mostly perpetuated by the Spanish media, that the FIA was rigging races by basically having a tyre lottery. There would be some tyres allocated to teams that would be the standard Pirelli rubber, but one team every race would get some tyres that were faster, and it was that sort of thing that was able to result in 7 different winners in 7 different races. Yes, 7 winners in as many races. Button won the season opener in Australia despite heavily fuel saving since lap 8 of that race. Alonso would win in Malaysia, Rosberg in China, Vettel in Bahrain, Maldonado at Spain, Webber in Monaco, and Hamilton in Canada. And then Alonso became the first double winner of that season at Valencia. God, I completely forgot about that track. But it wasn't until Singapore that Vettel was able to put together a run of victories like he had done the previous year. But like I said, the season was not without its controversy, because Red Bull was being hauled before the stewards because of little things on the car that were, well, not necessarily breaking the rules, but kind of breaking the spirit of the rules. And this is because of the blown diffuser ban that had happened at the end of the previous year, and people like Newey were trying to do everything they could to try and get some of that rear downforce back. Red Bull was alleged to have used a hole in the rulebook to change the throttle mapping in such a way that it helped recoup some of that lost blown exhaust gas. Quite genius, really. But they were also challenged at the Monaco Grand Prix that year for a trick floor that had a slot in the rear floor to do stuff. The slot had been brought in for Bahrain and had gone through every single check, no problem. But after Monaco, it was banned. They were also investigated because they were altering the height of the car in Parc Ferme during Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. But it wasn't just Red Bull, because Mercedes had a so-called double DRS system that had also attracted a bit of controversy. There was also the tyre dispute because tyres were being shredded within a few laps of putting them on at some tracks, and this was due to Pirelli using a test mule that was nothing like the cars it had been used on. Oops. Anyway, despite having a 30-something point lead in the championship at one point, Alonso was now fighting a losing battle. But at least one of these losses wasn't his fault. There was the opening corner melee caused by Romain Grosjean at Spa that cost Alonso points in the championship, and he'd also retired in Japan, where Vettel took maximum points. But Alonso was offered a lifeline at Abu Dhabi. Vettel had been caught out by the same rule that had affected Hamilton in Spain and got dumped to the back of the grid for having insufficient fuel in his car at the end of the third session, and during that race damaged his end plate on his front wing, which then left him in the quite annoying predicament of having to do something like 40 laps on the soft tyre, while Pirelli's estimates said it would only do about 35. Alonso would finish second in that race, while it was Kimi Raikkonen that would win that race, with the infamous "leave me alone, I know what to do" forced meme line. Red Bull would win the Constructors' Championship in America, with the season going to the wire for the drivers at Brazil. Alonso would somehow need to overcome a 13-point deficit to beat Vettel. If Vettel didn't score, Alonso needed third. If Alonso won, Vettel couldn't be lower than fourth. It could be done, and once again, Alonso was going to be offered a couple of lifelines. This was despite the fact that Vettel was fourth on the grid, Alonso 8th, so that already made Alonso's job a little bit harder. Alonso was hoping for some damp weather to start the race off with, basically hoping for the lottery that came with it, and Alonso got his wish. It rained about 10 minutes before the race start, and on a damp track he jumped to 5th while Vettel dropped to 7th. Then at turn 4, Raikkonen locked up trying to avoid contact and went off into the runoff area, while Vettel turned down on Bruno Senna and was spun round by the Williams. Despite taking 2 whacks to the rear suspension, one on either side, the Red Bull was able to continue. It wasn't the only thing that would go wrong for Raikkonen though, as later on he'd end up going down an escape road, only to get lost. A couple of laps later, a great piece of teamwork from Ferrari, and that's something you don't hear very often these days. What had happened was Massa had managed to shove Webber up towards the concrete wall on the right hand side of the track to make Webber take the long way around. This put Webber well offline. Massa was sort of holding the inside, and the gap created allowed Alonso to go through and take both of them to get up into third position. But a couple of laps later, it was all undone, because Alonso locked up at turn 1, went straight ahead, and Hülkenberg took the place instead. and because Massa was still holding off Webber and all that stuff going on behind, Alonso only just held on to his position. Vettel, by lap 8, had got to 8th, even with the spin tax, and he was on a charge. With Vettel now inside the points, Alonso had to win the race, but he was stuck in 4th, 5 seconds behind Hülkenberg, while up at the front, Hamilton and Button were scrapping over the lead. By lap 15, the conditions had deteriorated and some cars were on intermediates, with some drivers like Button staying out on dries, which actually ended up being the correct call. But Hülkenberg was also flying. He got past Button on lap 18 and led the race in a Force India. Because they were two of the drivers that never pitted for intermediates, their lead was almost a minute ahead of everybody else. But that lead evaporated when the safety car came out on lap 23. When the race resumed, Hamilton took second from Button and set off after Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg managed to stay out front until around lap 48 when he went full Kansai Doriftu through the twisty middle section of the track, and that gifted Hamilton's McLaren the lead once again. But Hulk had a very fast car in these conditions and eventually caught up by lap 54, trying a move into turn 1. But he had too much of a wiggle under braking, and another slide resulted in his right rear wheel smacking the left front wheel of Hamilton, putting Hamilton out of the race and sending Hulk back down the order. This handed Button the lead again, and conditions started to deteriorate once more. Vettel came into the pits for the intermediates, but his radio wasn't working, so his team wasn't ready, losing him time. Alonso took second from Massa, and Vettel then overtook Schumacher, who was racing in his final ever Grand Prix. But like in Brazil 9 years earlier, the race was about to enter its chaotic final stages. Paul di Resta crashed his Force India on the start-finish straight, just dropped it on a puddle straight into the wall, nothing he could have really done really, just total passenger, aquaplaning, all of that. I wouldn't say good stuff, but nasty stuff. But because this had happened on lap 69, nice, the race was going to have to end behind the safety car. The championship was decided behind the safety car. That's good coffee. Oh, cue the picture of Alonso staring daggers through his helmet. Alonso looked despondent on the podium, while Massa, who finished third, also looked disappointed with the way things had gone. But off the podium, the celebrations were starting, as Vettel and Schumacher shared a hug in the pit lane as it was a German champion at another German champion's final Grand Prix. Schumacher had also let Vettel through for that 6th place, which drew the ire of some online. But it really was a race of finals. It was the last race for Schumacher. It was the last win for Button. It was the last race in Formula 1 for Bruno Senna, Vitaly Petrov, Timo Glock, Pedro de la Rosa, Narain Karthikeyan and the HRT team. And it was also the last race at McLaren for Lewis Hamilton, who had, for some bizarre reason, decided to move to Mercedes from McLaren and would commit career suicide as a result. Huh? What? Oh. After the race, Ferrari filed a protest with the FIA after footage emerged that Vettel had overtaken the Toro Rosso Jean-Eric Verne while a flashing yellow light was shown at the side of the track. This also got people online getting a little bit giddy, because if the FIA had decided that yes, Vettel had indeed overtaken Jev under yellows, it would have been a 20-second time penalty that would have demoted Vettel to 8th, and therefore Alonso would have been champion. Ferrari withdrew the appeal when the FIA told them to actually watch the footage. Also, in a 2018 interview, blame was put on Mark Webber for costing Vettel those positions at the start, because when Mark Webber hasn't been punched enough by Red Bull, they shoot him in the face for good measure. So then, a look at the chaotic and turbulent Brazilian Grand Prix of 2012. If this has reignited the old nostalgia senses, then do give this video a like, and for more stuff like this, get subscribed with the bell on as well, so you never miss out on anything I do here. Massive thanks as ever to the kind folk at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help contribute to the Image Buying Fund, you can help out by following the link down in the description, where there's also links to Discord and also to my socials. So until next time, I've been Millward. Have a cracking day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.